This lack of visual evidence of life beyond our planet is a real challenge to scientists everywhere. The Fermi Paradox suggests that the sheer number of planets and stars stretching across this whole universe should make it more probable for life to manifest itself on these distant worlds. There are simply too many spheres out there for us to be truly alone. But there's just no trace or evidence of any life at all, turning a probable outcome into a paradox, where we don't see what we can deduct makes the most amount of sense. In other words, there's just too many spheres out there for whatever happened here to not happen there. But this is where things get really interesting, because this way of thinking assumes that certain conditions need to occur on these distant planets, like the perfect distance from a nearby star, for life to flourish. But the whole idea that our earthly conditions need to be replicated somewhere else for life to happen is problematic, because it assumes we're in the best possible position in the universe, and that everyone else needs to take a similar route to life, when in actuality we might be in one of the worst possible positions this universe has to offer. That of a planet that is only enjoying a fraction of the life that every other planet and star around it actually have, while being in total isolation from everyone else. What we call the perfect distance is just another way of saying we're not self-sufficient in a universe where the more developed planets might be managing the whole life thing on their own. So this whole narrative is misleading if it turns out we're in total isolation inside a universe that's more alive than we are. This false assumption that life will need to be like us, when we ourselves might still be in the earliest stages of our developmental growth cycle, is the real paradox. A group of isolated organisms without full life searching for replicas of themselves in isolation. You see, the Fermi Paradox is not a paradox at all, because the life that is speculated to be there in all these other spheres is not actually missing. When the laws of probability tell us that life needs to be there, at what point do we change the conversation and start realizing that it's possible for life to be right in front of us but still be completely off limits to us at the same time? The life is there, but our eyes or any other gadgets that we use to screen for life are held back from detecting it. The realization that all of the planets and stars in the universe are alive, but also locked away from us, is the logical solution to the age-old paradox. And the situation is not a rare one either, because we have actual living examples of nature's approach to this. We see it happening all the time, all around us. Nature is constantly hiding away organisms from their real surroundings in their earliest developmental stages. If you're on the receiving end of life, the thing that comes along with that, unfortunately, is the inability to tell that everything is alive all around you. Not being able to see any other living spheres and at the same time leeching our own life off of one of these spheres pretty much tells us everything we need to know about our current situation. The idea that we could somehow be more alive than our own life source is just absurd. And why do we think it? Because our source looks like a plasma-spitting fireball. We tend to view our sun as a kind of fireplace keeping us warm. But the sun is so much more. This fiery orb, or what looks to us like a fiery orb, is interacting with elements on Earth to give us the oxygen we breathe and the life we live. For the sun to be able to do that, it needs to share a similar composition. The sun and the Earth must share a similar structure for the passing of life to occur. A similarity which must contain life at the source before it can be passed on to anyone else. And because our sun is giving us our life, that means we can make the following deductions. The sun will look to us like a big fiery plasma ball, but the sun will also have a normal crust over this fiery plasma that's off limits to us, meaning we can't see it, we can't detect it, we can't do anything except understand that it's there. And on the sun's very normal crust, you'll get people, animals, and vegetation. Everything we have here, plus so much more. Because the sun can't be giving us life and have anything less at the same time. The sun's crust, its people, animals, and vegetation will all be off limits to us because we're on the receiving end of life. And the exact same thing is happening on all the other spheres also. Regardless of what Jupiter or Mars, for example, are made of or what they look like to all of us, they will all have a normal crust with people, animals, and vegetation. everywhere you look, in every direction. It all looks empty, but it's all bursting with life. What do you think they see when they look at all of us? Do you think they get to see us? They're only going to see what nature wants them to see, and that will all depend on where they are on their developmental ladder. We've been judging the other planets and stars based on our own situation, instead of seeing who we are from their perspective. But I guarantee they're not overly excited about us thinking we're more alive than they are, because they've all been through the exact same thing. It's the same process for everything in nature. First you're isolated, and then you're not. And it's the same thing as a collective. First we're isolated, then we're not. Nature is showing us exactly what nature wants us to see. And right now, we don't get to see much, just a tiny percentage of what's actually out there. We might ask what it feels like inside the womb for a fetus. But since the discovery of brain cells, this question should have changed, asking what it might feel like inside the womb for the brain cells of the fetus as well. Take a good look around you. This is what it feels like for a brain cell inside the womb.